Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
You are probably fed up of hearing about the cabinet reshuffle now because it's gone on and on 24/7. You see that stuff running on your TV screen, so you don't want more of it. It's coming out of your ears, I know. But there are aspects to this reshuffle which we can talk about, and these are political aspects. Some I mentioned in my live episode of Cut the Clutter with Ruhi Tiwari yesterday, last night. In fact, it was during that transmission that the portfolios came in. But then a lot of things you also realize with reflection when you sleep overnight, particularly after watching a very interesting Euro semi-final. Anyway, so here are a few political takeaways that I will list for you, important ones. But before I do that, a correction is in order. When I was speaking about former chief ministers in this new cabinet yesterday, I made a mistake. I said this one has 4 former chief ministers. I forgot Narayan Rane. So that is former Maharashtra chief minister. So this cabinet now at this count has 5 former chief ministers. Sarbanand Sonowal, Rajnath Singh, Narendra Modi, Arjun Munda and Narayan Rane. So apologies Narayan Rane, I forgot your name yesterday. That's one. So 5 ex-chief ministers. That correction out of the way. What is the biggest political shift that you see with the Modi-Shah BJP? Now episode 650 of Cut the Clutter, and I think one edition of National Interest also, I had mentioned how the BJP had built their power around NDA. But over time, as under Modi they became more powerful and they began getting majorities of their own, they actually continued to use and discard their allies because they no longer needed them. So the allies got nothing, no appointments of governors, no spoils of office, very few ministerial berths, and this reached its peak after the 2019 election results. In fact, once Ram Vilas Paswan passed away, in this Modi Council of Ministers, there was only one NDA member, and that was Ramdas Athavale of Republican Party, and that too in a completely unimportant ministry, insignificant ministry. No other ally was there because the impression seemed to be that the BJP can do without the allies, so why suffer them, because they then bring in other constraints, etc. Now that is shifting. Why that is shifting we'll come to, but we'll first of all tell you the reason we see a shift. So the first shift is that 2 cabinet positions have gone to BJP's allies in Bihar. That is one from JDU and one from LJP, Ram Vilas Paswan's party. So Ram Vilas Paswan's brother has come in, and also JDU's national president RCP Singh has also come in. So those 2 leaders have now come in as cabinet ministers. So first 2 cabinet ministers from the allies in the post 2019 Narendra Modi cabinet. That's an important thing. Similarly, you've seen other allies also being accommodated. Anupriya Patel in UP, who had been discarded, she's been brought back. Why is the BJP doing it? The BJP is doing it because they realize that one, unless they get a very large number of seats in UP, even if they win UP marginally by getting 205 or 10 seats, that will not be good enough for them because that will affect their numbers in Rajya Sabha going ahead. But more importantly, that will also shift the momentum of politics. So one, they need to again max out UP and Bihar in 2024 as well, because unless the BJP sweeps UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat and Maharashtra, which has now become a different kind of challenge, unless the BJP can do something like that, they really cannot get a majority in India. So that is why now a belated need to reach back, lean back and reach out to the allies you had discarded earlier. That's why you will find in UP also, in UP cabinet as well, you will find some accommodation of the Rajbhar community, of the Nishad community, because Sanjay Nishad is upset that his son has been given nothing. Now Nishads are scattered, but they are a sizable vote bank in Uttar Pradesh. They make a difference in 50 plus seats. Now they claim 80, but I think 50 is a conservative number. So these little communities and these little vote banks become very vital in next year's UP election. And after that, unless Narendra Modi's BJP keeps these vote banks cohesive or these coalition partners cohesive, bets will be off on 2024. Remember, the issue in 2024 is not who comes to power, but whether Narendra Modi can come back to power, BJP can come, or Narendra Modi can lead BJP back to power with a majority of its own. That gap between a majority and a lack of majority is just about 30-35 seats. So that is the big thing on the BJP's mind, and that's why you find Kurmis in UP, Nishads in Bihar will be accommodated now. Bihar in UP will be accommodated now. By the way, Nishads are like a fishing community. Phulan Devi was a Nishad leader, member of parliament. Also in Mahabharat, Eklavya was a Nishad, to understand what the community. And the anxiety about Maharashtra you can see in the elevation and accommodation of Narayan Rane, because BJP is preparing for a situation where they may not be able to get Shiv Sena back in the fold. So frankly, all these rumors keep rising that Shiv Sena and BJP are coming close together, etc. These are just rumors. I haven't seen anything credible as yet to believe any of those. It does look like the Shiv Sena's mind is made up. So BJP is trying to expand its footprint by itself by giving Narayan Rane more importance and projecting him as a Maratha leader, because as we know, BJP's most preeminent leader, Devendra Fadnavis, is a Brahmin in Maharashtra. Then the second very important political takeaway from this reshuffle is ideological purity. How BJP's mind has now changed on the demand for ideological purity. When 2014 the first cabinet was made with a full majority, BJP's idea was that all key positions should only go to people who have ideological purity. That means who are fully our own, ideally from an RSS background. It was then said that look, we don't want lateral entry. If we need people of talent, we can hire them, we can give them other jobs. They don't have to become ministers. This is not a cabinet. Our cabinet will not be like Vajpayee's cabinet, that people were brought in from everywhere. Our cabinet will only have our people. Our people means people subscribing to the ideology from early on. Anybody can defect. Now Narayan Rane also says, I subscribe to BJP's ideology, but not that, but should come from the nursery of the BJP's ideology. That has now been diluted, and there the Modi Shah BJP has changed its mind. As Maynard Keynes said, I changed my mind as facts change. So the facts have changed because the West Bengal loss has been a big setback for them, and they've realized that the ability of Narendra Modi to get votes for everybody else is limited. He can get votes for himself, but his ability to swing votes in the names of any other leaders or in any other states in a state election when he is personally not on the ticket is very limited. So now there is need to get talent from wherever you can get talent. That's why Hardeep Puri had come in earlier. He is not RSS. He was at least in ABVP. So that background is there. Nirmala Sitharaman, not RSS. She was there earlier, as were Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi. But then now Sarbananda Sonowal, not RSS. He was Assam Gan Parishad, and before that All Assam Students Union. Narayan Rane has come from Congress and Sena, not RSS but Sena, which is now an adversary. Ashwini Vaishnav, former IAS officer, 51, brilliant guy, but does not check that box about the demand for an old, lifelong ideological purity and training. R.K. Singh, former IAS officer, minister on the up. His performance in power ministry has been efficient, calm and actually quite good. He's now got promoted. Once again, does not check that box of ideological origins and training from the RSS nursery. Jyotiraditya Scindia, ex-Congress, never RSS. The closest you can say he's been to RSS is the fact that his grandmother, Vijayaraje Scindia Rajmata, used to be one of the leading lights of the RSS and Jansangh, but that was a long time back, and he and his father were estranged from her politics, from her and her daughter's politics all this while. So he is just coming to BJP lately, but he's got a key position, he's got a cabinet position. So the BJP has decided now that it can no longer insist on ideological purity because it has to build a larger coalition. Then you have the next point, next political point, that Northeast. This cabinet, this council of ministers, that's the more accurate way of putting it, because the cabinet itself is just 30 people, that is cabinet ministers. The entire council of ministers is 77 people. This council of ministers has more representation from the Northeast than probably any other in India's history. Now, all this data is a bit complicated, particularly if you go back behind behind the period when reorganization of Assam and northeastern states took place, that was early 70s. So a lot of it was then Assam, etc. But generally I would say this has more members from the Northeast, 2 cabinet members, one from Arunachal, Kiran Rijiju, the new law and justice minister, and second from Assam, that is Sarbananda Sonowal, Minister for Waterways, etc. So 2 cabinet ministers from the Northeast and 2 ministers of state, one from Tripura, Pratima Bhaumik, she is Minister of State in Social Justice and Empowerment, and also Rajiv Ranjan Singh from Manipur, he is Minister of State in Ministry of External Affairs. Once again you see politics there, and I don't say politics in a negative or a judgmental sense. Life in politics is about power, and the power in politics comes through the numbers. So the BJP also knows that so far it's been piggyback riding on many other local partners for its seats in the Northeast. But if it were to fall short by 30, 40, 50 seats over majority the next time, it will need to make up some seats somewhere, and Northeast is one of those regions. That's why this big focus on the Northeast. So that is the next political takeaway from this. So if you want me to put 2 lines under it and tell you what is the result of this sum, the result of this sum is that for a long time Narendra Modi said in the run up to 2014, even after, that he is not for representational politics in the terms of castes, communities, groups, etc., etc. That is now changing, because if you look at this new cabinet, this actually the strongest logic driving it is representational, and that is linked to election results. Because you know what, in politics you ask, and I keep saying it again and again, let me repeat it, you ask a starving person what is 2 plus 2, it's an old Hindi metaphor, the starving person will say 4 rotis, right? You ask a politician what is 2 plus 2, the answer will be 4 votes. And that applies to no other political formulation more than to the Modi Shah BJP. That's the reason I keep saying this is the most political of India's governments. All governments are political, but this government thinks politics and votes all the time. Everything else then follows in its wake. Now, before I conclude, today is also the 14th death anniversary of Chandrasekhar, our 8th Prime Minister, a short-term Prime Minister only for 7 months, of which for 3 months he was just a caretaker. He just had 54 MPs in Parliament. That is less than exactly 10% in Parliament. He was in power, he was supported by the Congress. So his was a scrawny tail of a government wagged by the dog that was outside the tent. And soon enough Congress pulled down his government. So why do we remember him? I wrote a national interest piece and a tribute to him when he passed away, and I asked a question that if you look at all of India's Prime Ministers, who do you think was the weakest? And you would probably immediately jump and go over the list and say must have been Chandrasekhar, because he was actually Prime Minister only for 4 months and then a caretaker and just 54 MPs. So what power could he have? But if you look at his track record, he was actually among us most prime ministerial of prime ministers. In fact, of all our short-term prime ministers, that is Charan Singh, Morarji Desai, who was not that short-term but still short-term, VP Singh, Chandrasekhar, IK Gujral, Deve Gowda, Chandrasekhar was the most prime ministerial. So just as we are remembering him, you will also see on the screen some pictures running. These are pictures from the archive of Praveen Jain, our photo editor, and also among India's foremost political photographers. So see these pictures, you will see many familiar faces there. Many of them are gone now. They were quite a remarkable cast of characters. Indian politics. So look at those and remember that with 54 MPs, Chandrasekhar sent out India's gold by plane to save India a default on its foreign payments. The same Chandrasekhar allowed US aircraft taking off from Diego Garcia to refuel in India on their way to Iraq for the first Gulf War, something that any political government, any party's government in 1991, early 1991 would have found it very difficult to do given the deep anti-Americanism in Indian politics and Indian public debate. But he did that because he thought it was in the national interest. He also brought Manmohan Singh into his government as his advisor, but as also a permanent invitee to the cabinet meetings. Why? One, because he knew the economy was a mess and something had to be done. So he brought him and he left him in situ when Narasimha Rao came in. So Narasimha Rao could elevate him to finance minister, and Manmohan Singh had been in the system already. He had just finished his tenure at South Commission. He also headhunted Yashwant Sinha, who was then a joint secretary in the Ministry of Surface Transport, and brought him into politics. Yashwant Sinha joined his cabinet. He had headhunted him almost 7-8 years earlier when he met him at Karpuri Thakur's house. Karpuri Thakur was a former chief minister of Bihar. When both Chandrasekhar and Yashwant Sinha had gone to call on him, Yashwant Sinha was from the Bihar cadre of IAS. And Yashwant Sinha said he wants to leave service and do some social work and run an NGO. And Chandrasekhar told him, as Yashwant Sinha says, that you can then maybe improve the fate of 1 or 2 villages, come join public life. So he also headhunted Yashwant Sinha for his politics, and he presided over a very tumultuous period of Indian political history when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated midway through an election campaign, cut the election campaign into two. He maintained calm in the country and ensured a peaceful handover to the next government. So once again, there was much that was wrong with Chandrasekhar. We can talk about that also at some point of time. But since he was such a brilliant member of the cast of characters of all-time greats of Indian politics, he deserves a mention today on his 14th anniversary.